live with part 3 of our review of the Winter 21 release notes. Peter, welcome. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. It's Thursday again. Here we go. It's all good. It's a bright sunny day over here. So I
Same
feel like
here.
we haven't done a weather check for a
No,
while.
we
On one
haven't.
of these, so
It's a pleasant 21 degrees here.
well, it's
Celsius.
17 degrees here. So
Nice.
it's only going to get to 19 today, so it's a bit cool.
Cool. So today we're going to carry on with our review of the Winter 21 release. We're going to get to some fun stuff today once we get into the more generic platform features, customization features, which is going to be cool to go through. But shall we kick it off with Commerce Cloud?
Indeed. So there's a bunch of stuff in Commerce Cloud. We'll start with order management flows. So there's now a new flow that's updated. I told you before, I can't get my words out today. Do you want to read that for a second while my brain catches up or my mouth catches up with my brain?
Well, so one of the things that I think we talked about with Ed on a previous episode about Commerce Cloud was the way that it actually structures everything using flow, so that you can basically take the out of the box flow, but then extend it and modify it for your own needs to create the right experience you want. So it looks to me that this feature is basically taking advantage of some of the new flow features, which allow you to trigger flows in new ways. So this is taking advantage of the record type trigger, effectively like writing an Apex trigger is how you can trigger a flow now. And you get to do it in the same context before or after events. So that basically gives you a new flow from the sounds of it to then incorporate into your Commerce Cloud, B2B Commerce Cloud, I believe this would be, rollout, and just have that another degree of customization.
So it's also interesting. It's replacing the process builder flow, and that's no longer required. So, and that goes with that conversation that we had with Charlie the other week. That process builder flow is going to be the thing to go to when you're looking for workflow automation. Makes perfect sense in that regard. So.
Yeah, for sure. And so if we carry on, we've got an integration dashboard.
Yeah, this one's good. This actually captures all your integrations in one place. And being able to see those things, understand what's going on, and it's all clicks, not code. That's even more important. Right. So, we have that balance between development and admin. This is a really good, strong tool for an admin to be able to view those integrations and manage them. So,
and that should. What do we got? We got the release notes up in front of us now. So it's just something. It's going to be in the setup menu, administration, store integrations, and just something you can easily get to and find very easily.
Yep.
And imagine these would be the B2B specific integrations, things like payment gateways, and you may have other integrations behind the scenes, just feeding generic product data in Salesforce and that kind of thing. But this would be very much your B2B centric integrations.
Indeed.
Cool.
Next one we've got is providing accurate checkout information with time to live. Time to live. Doesn't sound right. No, it must be right because I copied it across. It is. So you can set a timeout limit for your B2B commerce checkout, and you can manage that within Commerce Cloud itself now. So that's going to drive that sales behavior, that purchase behavior from a customer's perspective. So
yep. We'll keep whizzing through the Commerce Cloud ones. So what have we got? A few little things.
Yeah, I think the next
no search results.
Yeah, and how many times you go onto a site where you're going to buy something and you type something in and you get no response at all. Commerce Cloud certainly acted that way before. It's now going to return a page that says or a result saying no results actually, or no search results. So getting that response back, you're not just going to hang in the ether basically. So
Yep. And maybe it says you can, add your own messaging into that page. So, perhaps advice on how to structure a query. Try searching like this to find what you're after, that kind of thing.
yep.
Just to make that experience better for the end user. And last couple, we've got cart errors.
Yeah,
It
so
sort of almost sounds like a bug that they've fixed.
yeah,
can make
that's
errors
the way I
go
read
away.
it as well. Yeah. So they stayed there, which is a bit bizarre in itself, isn't it? So yeah, they can be dismissed and get rid of for good, as in permanently.
Yep. And lastly, we've sort of got a beta feature. Buyers can add all cart items to a list in one action, rename their lists, delete lists. So I imagine this is sort of like wish list functionality that you might have on an e-commerce store, and this is basically allowing people to convert their cart to a list that they maybe come back and buy later, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's how I saw it as well. So again, beta version, so it's not out there in GA, but it will be hopefully in sometime the next release or so.
Cool. Right, well, let's jump on to a cloud that we both love and use extensively, Community Cloud. So we've seen a theme in the last few releases, a tightening of security around Community Cloud, which has been really good to see. I think we talked about it on one of our earlier episodes with Duncan, I think it was, the Community Cloud expert. And just as you're exposing more and more important data to customers, you've got to be really sure that you're not inadvertently exposing the wrong data to the wrong audience, really.
Yep.
And the guest user access was a bit of a well, to use a Star Wars reference, it was like the thermal exhaust. It was the one thing that if you maybe accidentally tick the wrong button, you could accidentally blow up the Death Star. So a lot of tightening of security around the guest user so that you inadvertently don't, this object, guest user can read all of those records, which could lead to results that are less than desirable, shall we say.
Yeah.
So this has sort of become a thing that you had to turn on. I think it is becoming a critical update that you basically are being pushed along to get that security changed as it moves into winter 21. Yeah, so it can't be disabled anymore from winter 21.
Yeah, that's right. So that's a good step forward. The next couple of things are very similar around the whole thing. Reducing object permissions for guest users, you just mentioned. Let guest users see other members of this community setting is now disabled.
Yep.
Allowing users to use standard external profiles to self-register and log into communities and portals. So after the spring 21 release, users in the org who assigned those external profiles will no longer be able to log into communities.
Yeah.
So a few of those things around that, it's worthwhile going and having a look at the notes and seeing exactly what is in there, because it's tightening up those controls, and it may affect those existing communities that are out there. So good stuff there. One of the good ones I like is that community users will be able to authenticate via SMS going forward, which I'm surprised they couldn't do that before, but it sort of doesn't surprise me at the same time.
It's I guess become standard, and again it comes back to the use cases of what people are using communities for now. You are potentially exposing, personally, if I log into a community, even if the only thing I can do is update my address and my phone number, that is personally identifiable information that needs to be dealt with in a very sensitive way. And so just simple authenticating, ensuring you've got the right protections in place, just even from a logging in point of view, and having two-factor authentication is becoming standard across all sites. this is a good feature to see. It would be good to see that kind of extended to other forms of two-factor authentication. There have been examples globally of SIM card hijacking as a way that people can basically steal your phone number, and then that gets them around the two-factor authentication by SMS. So I'm sure this won't be the last that we see from a two-factor auth with communities. There's lots of different ways to do this now. People have apps as another mechanism to do this. So yeah, I think we'll keep seeing more on this sense, but it's really good to see them heading in this direction because it's so important.
Yep. And then lastly, for communities, there's a pilot around Lightning Web Components based templates. So you can build your own template basically. So it'd be interesting to actually get our hands on that one as we keep talking about these things. So yes, I've just looked at that and thought there's a bit of a typo on my notes.
So I think if this is one, I think I have a little bit of context on that this is the start of a transition to moving to a new framework for how effectively how the runtime is going to work, and what it's going to mean once it's fully beyond pilot and implemented is effectively faster load times.
Right.
So at the moment, there's the Aura runtime, and they're moving to the Lightning Web Component runtime. And once everything's kind of standardized on that, they'll be able to kind of get rid of a bunch of legacy stuff that loads on the page at the same time, just in case you've got a mixture of Visualforce and Aura and Lightning Web Component. Once everything's standard on, okay, my template is Lightning Web Component only, that creates a far more optimized experience, and your load times of your pages will be faster, is my understanding of why they're heading in this direction. So that feeds into what both of us have discussed before, the longer term potential for communities as just a digital experience platform, which could be used. And you could do this today, but build your marketing site, have your anything on the web that you might use. The CMS functionality comes in. It all starts tying together to create this digital experience platform.
Yep.
So this is a kind of a key pillar, I think, to that in terms of having a fast and efficient, because at times Lightning has been accused of being a bit slow.
Yeah, and let's face it. I mean, our expectations for something is it's speed. Also, you began to call something lightning, it needs to be that quick. So,
yes.
Yeah,
true.
But that's the thing. I mean, it's got to be faster than what it has been. So,
yeah,
it's good stuff.
Yeah. So, moving on to the fun stuff, or at least stuff you and I find the most fun.
Well, it's the more interesting stuff. I'm just looking to see how many pages of notes I've got there. I think I've got about 5 pages of the platform stuff, basically, which is, again, it's just amazing how much stuff is in this release. So let's talk customization, platform.
Flow Builder.
Yeah. So there's lots of work around Flow Builder this time around. The first one that we've got is that you can trigger a flow to run before a record is deleted. I've got a feeling I dreamt about something like this last night, actually, which is scary in itself. But the idea that you can actually trigger anything before something is deleted is that's a massive win.
Yeah, so you can do this with an Apex trigger today, but
right.
It's not a use case that you think about often.
Yeah.
But there's lots of ways you can use that. You can use that as a way of actually preventing the deletion. So, someone deletes a record that they shouldn't be deleting, you can actually use that before delete event to stop the deletion. You could do something where you say, okay, that's fine, you can delete that record, but I'm going to just jump in here and make an audit log that this record got deleted. So, a few different use cases for how you could use that, and building on what we've seen in the previous release where we got before insert and after insert and update flows, which kind of mirrored the way triggers work. Now we've got the delete scenario. So you're very quickly moving to a situation where, okay, do I need to write a trigger at all? Can I do this in flow instead? Now, there's not always that simple. Caveat that there's other considerations around performance and maintainability and all sorts of things to consider what your approach there is. But this is really fleshing out the flow product to be something quite powerful. Yep. And I was reflecting the other day, this flow's been around for 10 years.
Has it really?
It's building off the original visual flow acquisition that they made in 2010, I think it was.
Right.
So and in those very early days of the product, you had to download a third-party tool.
Yep.
You did all your drag and drop stuff. You exported an XML file, then you uploaded that to Salesforce, and it's just evolved into what it is today, which is quite getting more and more powerful by the release, which is cool.
And to demonstrate that, there's a few things that are coming out both in pilot and beta. The first one that's coming out in pilot is being able to build multi-column screens in Flow Builder. So you're going to be able to arrange your Flow screen components into multiple columns, so without touching any code at all. And it says visually appealing layouts, which leads into the next item as well, which I think is interesting.
Yeah. So it's funny, they've got the release notes up for this one, but there's no screenshot, as I was hoping that would kind of demonstrate what this could be. I was building a flow just this week, and just the way that it all lined up and the way I needed to point from one component to the next, it was very hard to lay it out in a way that seemed logical, and without having lines overlapping other things. So what I'm hoping this multi-column will be, that there'll be a magic button that's kind of like an auto layout, and it'll just neatly arrange all your things in a logical sense. Multiple sections, or maybe it basically almost from a documentation point of view, maybe it'll allow you to basically create swim lanes and say, well,
that's what I sort of thought it was more that.
Yeah, we've got this part of the process, cool. So we'll group all those elements together over here. This is where this object's being updated. Then we move into this phase.
Yeah.
So that'll be cool. I'll look forward to playing with that one.
The next one sort of goes into that as well,
right.
Being auto layout.
What I just wished for.
Yeah. And it's in beta. So being able to connect elements on the flow automatically, and then also making sure things are in alignment, because there are some of us that spend more time trying to align things up than actually writing it up in the first place. That solves that problem.
Yep.
So
honestly, the amount of time I spend dragging things 1 or 2 pixels just because I want the lines to be straight.
It's good to know that I'm not alone that way.
It just doesn't feel right if everything's not neat and aligned.
Well, we're in the right place.
Yeah.
Another beta one is debug. Debug auto launch flows directly on the canvas. So you're going to be able to debug within the actual the browser tab itself.
Yeah, so. Which is good, because just, I guess, for context for the audience, an auto launch flow is basically running everything in the background. So you've got no visual components, nothing on the screen.
Yep.
So when you click that debug button, you loads a whole new browser window, and then all you see is a blank screen and a list of debugs down the right-hand side. And so
you can't draw the two together.
Yeah, so I think it's just saying, well, we can just pull that list of debug logs into the main screen itself, which will be good. Still, there's still some other improvements I'd like to see in that debug experience, but maybe they're coming up later in the list. So we'll
Like what? Because there's no one to, not this one, but the one after that, which is, hey, what else to talk about now? Locate a flow builder error with a click of a link. Now that's not in the window, but you throw an error, you get something, you go, well, okay, it's meaningless because I can't actually trace it back at all. Well, now you're going to be able to go straight to the error from the from the
right.
email or the error message, I should say. So,
Yep. And error handling actually is another aspect of flow that I've no doubt very smart people are working on this, and we're not inventing anything that probably isn't already in the works. But error handling is another area within flow that would be good to see some improvements on. If you're writing something in code, you can put something in a try catch block and sort of gracefully handle the error. In flow, it just kind of dies and then sends an email to the admin. So, if you have a bug that ends up somewhere and it runs across a whole bunch of records, you can end up with a whole bunch of emails in your inbox. So being able to handle things gracefully would be something that would be quite cool from an error handling point of view too. But this will be good in terms of linking back to what's the actual element that caused and highlighting that on the canvas.
Yep.
That'd be pretty cool.
Skipped over one there. So you can use and, all, and custom operators across all flow builder elements.
So give us anything about what the custom operators are. Familiar with?
Don't think it did.
That would be good. So one of the things you couldn't do, I may have got this wrong, but say even in it was list views and that kind of thing, you could define some filters, and then you could say, I want it to be 1 and bracket 2 or 3 kind of thing.
Yeah.
In terms of,
yeah.
And you haven't been able to do that in Flow. So I assume that's what custom operators would bring in, that kind of functionality.
Yeah. So the words that they've said is that you can set the condition logic to meet any condition or all conditions. So that should handle those type of things. So what did it do before? Was that only?
You could basically just do one of these conditions or all of these conditions.
Right.
So it was kind of quite binary as to how you set that up.
Cool. So next one along. And we've still got a whole heap to go. You can quickly see the triggers of your flows on the flows page in setup. So you can see which trigger has your auto-launched flow is using at a glance on the flows list in setup. So
that'll be quite useful. So that's almost because you create the auto-launched flow, but then you have no idea where that gets used in other areas. So this is sort of making those links so that you can quickly get your head around, okay, this is an auto-launch flow, but it actually is triggered by this other event. And instead of, if you're brand new to an org and trying to debug something and trying to track it down, it might be hard to actually link everything together. So this is just a nice feature to make that a lot easier.
So a similar type of concept to if you delete a field and it's been used in multiple places, it will say, well, you can't delete it because it's here.
Yep.
So,
But this is almost going a step ahead of that to don't even have to try and delete it.
Yeah.
This is going to just proactively tell you, hey, this is where this is used. It'd be quite cool if a field could say, here's the list of areas where I'm clicked and used. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm also not suggesting that the way to find out how a field is or where a field is used is to go and delete it, because that's not the way to do it. But it's more a safety catch than anything else.
Yeah. Yep.
I hope people don't go and do that now. Run flows in system context without sharing to access the recommendation object for external users. That's a lot of words, man. So now only internal users can access recommendation object records. Privacy community portal. So this is tied into the community stuff.
Yep.
So the community portal and guest users have read access to those. So it's tightening again, isn't it? Those permissions. My words are not within my brain today.
Yeah, and I think this ties into a use case I heard about a few months ago where you might do something in the context of a guest user or a community user that's very locked down, and that triggers an event, but then you've got a flow that runs off the back of a custom object or something that can run in the system context and update some objects that that guest user or that community user doesn't have access to.
Yep.
So you can kind of use it's almost a bit of a proxy to, and I heard about this from someone at Salesforce, so it must be legit. So I need to update an opportunity or something indirectly that you can basically run this in the context of the system user so that you can see those objects that the community or guest user can't see. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. That's good.
And then we've got some postponements.
Yeah, that's right. So there's a list of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 of them in particular have been postponed out to spring 21. So we'll have the details up on the blog when we post that a bit later on today. And they're in the release notes. So it's worthwhile having a look at those, because if you are thinking you're going to get some of this stuff in winter, you will not.
So a couple of good ones in there that I've been... The first one around criteria based on the original record values.
Mm-hmm.
So that was something with this new functionality to run a flow before an update, for example. In a trigger, you can look at the old values and the new values and make decisions based on, okay, this field has changed from this to that. And I haven't been able to find a way to do something similar in Flow. You just get the new values.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that first one will be, again, another step towards enabling flows to replace triggers more fully, but obviously it's not quite ready for prime time.
Yep. Okay. Break up your record details with dynamic forms is now generally available. Yay.
Yeah. This is worth diving into in a bit more detail. So I'll see if I can bring up a screenshot if I've got one. Because as I understand it, dynamic forms are effectively replacing page layouts. In the big scheme of things.
And I think, as we've talked about before, I think ultimately can also replace some of the usage for record types as well. So, potentially.
Yep. Yeah, in terms of you using that dynamic nature of it. So what have we got here? Yeah, so you can see, on the way that this is kind of bringing fields in, dynamic sections that then you can put, if we scroll down, once you've got this dynamic form enabled, it doesn't show, but I imagine then you can kind of do some filtering to say, are the conditions met to display these fields or this block of fields? And that reminds me, that's where record types come in, because what you would often do in the past is have a one-to-one relationship between a record type and a page layout. And if you had a case that flowed through a few stages and you basically wanted, okay, well, these are the fields that display at the beginning, these are the fields that display in the middle, these are the ones at the end, you would transition through a series of record types, and then that would, in the background, transition you through some different page layouts.
Yep.
Whereas this would enable you to have one page layout that, depending on the life cycle of whatever record you're looking at, you could have it evolve and ultimately make it easier to maintain.
Yeah.
Because in that scenario, if you've got 3 record types and 3 page layouts to maintain, and you're doing that same approach across multiple objects, this bring everything in one place. And another aspect of this is you don't have to, once you replace standard page layouts, which kind of in Lightning today, you go into the Lightning builder, I need to change the page layout, jumps you out to the old page layout editor. So you're kind of changing things in 2 places. This whole area, how they're evolving it, will just be so much easier to maintain.
It's going to remove a whole heap of noise from orgs, basically. If you can take that noise away from the page layouts, the record types, and have only one layout, then that makes it so much simpler. And your permission sets and your security and all that type of stuff would still sit below that, and that if you don't have access to that field, then you're not going to see it and all that type of stuff. So,
yep.
You won't be able to update it, etc. So it's a smarter way of doing it.
Yep. And one you can't see from the screenshot, but one would assume that when you're actually viewing, a record, that the look and feel looks the same, whether it's a old school page layout or this new approach. Looks a little bit different on the setup screen in terms of the way you drag fields around and that kind of thing, but you imagine the end user experience is still the same.
I would hope so.
And this actually, as an aside, I think this goes back to what was promised with Lightning years ago, is that once you're interacting at the Lightning page level with down to the field, then you can start to be like, okay, well, I don't like the standard date picker. I've downloaded this alternative date picker from the App Exchange, and I'm going to drag that on. Just, in the past, you might replace a whole page layout with a Visualforce page because you don't like one tiny bit of it.
Yep.
This is going to give you that full flexibility and be able to craft exactly the page layouts you want.
So custom within standard, basically, which is the best thing. So.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay, so we've got some new flexibility with dynamic actions on desktop and mobile as well. So desktop is now GA, and there's a beta version of that. Mobile's in beta. So dynamic actions for support are across supported standard objects, which is account, case, contact, lead, and opportunity. And they're in beta for desktop, as I said. So
I think one of our colleagues was posting about this week, actually, and it's the same. Do we have I'm just trying to see if we've got a screenshot of it. Yeah, we do. Let me just bring that up. So it's basically building off exactly what we've just said, in that, let's say you've got a whole bunch of actions, effectively buttons that appear at the top of the screen when you're looking at a record. At any given point in time, and to your earlier point, you would often do this with record types and page layouts, because on each page layout you could just change the custom buttons to be just the ones relevant for that stage. Yep. This basically says, okay, here's all the actions on my Lightning page, and I'm going to create some visibility conditions so that only the ones that there's no point showing a button if it's just not appropriate for the user to click right now because of the status that the record's in, that kind of thing. I don't know, silly example, but you can't escalate a case that's already closed. Don't just ultimately you'll end up creating better user experiences, because the user, you can keep a nice clean user experience where effectively they can't take the wrong action. So this one, combined with the dynamic forms we just talked about, is really giving a lot of power to out-of-the-box page layouts. So they're going to be quite powerful indeed. And again, like we said, customized but not coding. It's kind of the best of both worlds.
It's really bringing it into this century, isn't it? So,
when some of it's these are things that we've talked about for years and years. So there's sort of a realization of all of potential gone by, which is good to finally see.
I feel, and again, and maybe it's because there is so much in this release or not, but I just feel like there's more momentum behind this. And I hope that Spring 21 is going to be as big again, certainly around these platform type of enhancements, because that's the stuff that's sort of been lacking for a little while. So
yeah, a lot of this comes back to very core platform stuff that we wanted to see evolve for a while.
So we've still got a few more to go.
Right, let's rattle through them.
Indeed. So some of this next few are about profiles. So you can improve your org security with profile filter option. So this is limiting the users from viewing any profile names that other than their own. So,
Right.
Which is good because that way, well, they should only really know what they know. Obviously, system admins will be able to see it all. And the other one is restricting permission cloning in profiles. So, I suppose, would you give a standard user access to clone a profile? I would have thought that only system admin could have done that, but anyway.
It seems if just reading into it, perhaps ensuring that the permissions accessible to your org are enabled when you clone profiles. So maybe if there's permissions in the profile that is sort of feature related, well, there's no point giving that profile permission if it's turned off at the org level.
Yeah.
That's kind of the way I'm interpreting that one.
Okay. So next one along is deploying organization-wide defaults and criteria-based sharing rules together. So wrapping those two things up at the same time. It's probably more meaningful to you than me, I think, mate.
Yeah, I think I'm not sure if both of those could go in a change set together. Maybe only criteria-based sharing rules could, and perhaps that led to you could ultimately have a dependency there that you had to manually work out and make sure one thing was updated before the other, and this kind of lets you just send it all as one bundle and it's going to work. And also because some of that criteria-based sharing and different org-wide defaults can trigger a job in the background that's doing the sharing calculation, which can take quite a long time to run. So again, if you had to do them separately, you might ultimately trigger two recalcs. This can probably just take everything at once and do one recalc and be done with it.
Cool. A couple of interesting ones. Disabling rendering of HTML in custom field labels. So you won't be able to do custom HTML tags.
Yeah, I wasn't quite sure about this one. I haven't seen custom field labels used in that way.
In a long time.
Yeah.
Oh.
But I guess I understand where they're coming from. A lot of people use custom labels as just a way of merging something in and can be used across a number of different places. And so if you had a bad actor in the system who basically wrote some code in that field and then suddenly it gets injected into a Lightning page or something, and that code, the browser says, oh, well, I'll run that code. That's what you're telling me to do. And that could have consequences that you haven't considered. So
yeah,
I think that's just a real security feature, that one.
The next one I've included just simply because it's a sort of a what the moment. You can choose your utility bar alignment, as in where it sits on your page. Now, I didn't know this was a thing, and I'm sort of trying to work out why this was a thing in the first place. But now you can do it, so it's good they've invested some time to make this happen. I'd be interested to see how many orgs we go into and see where it's changed.
Yeah, I was helping out one of our teams this week who were playing around with the utility bar, actually. And I think one of the things I read or noticed was that in the old school classic service console interface, which kind of looked like Lightning, but it was classic, and they didn't call it the utility bar, they called it something else, the console bar or something.
Yeah.
Everything was on, like your phone pops and everything appeared on the right. And then with the move to Lightning, everything started appearing on the left. And I'm sure that upset some people who are just, they're creatures of habit.
It must have.
And so, yeah, now you've got the flexibility to choose. So.
There you go. Okay. I'm still shaking my head at that one. Choose when to show the submit for approval action. So this is an interesting one. We've been talking about approvals on a project the last couple of days. So this is both generally available in beta. I don't understand how it can be generally available and beta at the same time. That's
wondering the same thing.
But well, not really sure. So if you ever want to display the submit for approval action only when the record's eligible for approval, you'll be able to do that. So that on top of dynamic actions and dynamic forms, we're getting to that sophistication around this stuff now. So it's again,
and then it falls in exactly that category. Why let the user click the button if it's not relevant at that point in time? So that is good to see. And actually, the whole approval engine process is probably another area that's been around since very early days, but maybe hasn't received the love in recent times as well. So good to see a new feature in that area.
Yeah. And we're almost at the end. Can you believe that? 3 weeks of...
It's taken us 3 weeks.
And then we end on domains. So there's an update to deploy a My Domain. This is an important one because, again, we'll enforce, or really enforce, you're having a My Domain through in winter 22. So you get ready, set it up because you're going to have no choice but use it. So, and again, that's a good one. So,
yeah, and that's a feature we've been recommending to clients for years to make sure they've got set up. It does have a number of advantages. And I even learned recently, I used to tell clients, be careful in choosing your My Domain because once it's set, it's set. And then I became aware that you could log a case if you made a typo or wanted to change it. And now I believe you can actually edit it yourself.
Right, okay.
So that's good.
And the last one we've got is setting that allows non-secure HTTP connections for sites was removed. So this was HTTPS connections was enforced in production August post May 1, 2020. In winter 21, Salesforce has removed this from the site setting. So
again, just
security.
Everyone's moving with effectively the browsers enforce this one. So following along, and it's all security based. That everything's going HTTPS. So just get rid of those non-secure connections. Phew, we made it.
Yeah.
What on earth are we going to talk about next week?
I almost felt like we were going to keep talking about winter 21 until spring 21 was out, or 22. So I've got what year it is now. Hang on, what year is it? It is spring 21.
Well, this is where it gets confusing, right? We're still in 2020, but it's the winter 21 release.
And it doesn't help that our seasons are
exactly. We're both basking in sunshine today. So
indeed.
Well, it's a huge release. It's taken us 3 weeks to get through it. It's a good one. There's some gems in there, regardless of which parts of the product you're using. I think there's something for everyone.
It's almost like the Oprah show.
So,
everybody gets something.
Exactly. So now we just need to get our hands on some orgs pre-release, or I'm not sure in the schedule if the sandboxes have been upgraded yet.
Well, by the time we finish this, yes, they've all been upgraded. Yep. So yes, it's all out there. Go and play.
Well, perhaps that could be an area we'll go and have a play, and maybe we can report back in a future episode some of the things we've found when we've put these things really through their paces. I'm keen to try out dynamic forms. I think that's a really interesting one for me to go and check out, as well as some of the flow changes, so we can report back how we go in a future episode.
Sounds like a plan.
But as for this week, thank you everyone for sticking with us for 3 weeks. We hope it was enjoyable for everyone to get through it all. There's some good stuff in there, and go away and play with some Winter 21 features.
And have fun.
Excellent. As always, thanks Peter. See you next week.
Thanks, Dan. See you then.